It's me, AK from ElderDrunkenHighlander, coming at you with another baller deck tech, and we call this one Dog God. Before we start, I just want to say, I know I've been kind of MIA from videos in the Discord. It's been a hectic year for me, but I'm always super appreciative of you guys for sticking with us and giving your support. It means the world to us at ElderDrunkenHighlander, and we gotta let you know that from time to time, you know? I'm gonna bring more low-key casual style content because that's the level I play at most now, and the way I interact with Magic most now. But I'll talk more on that at the end of the video. If you like what we do, and you want more of our jank decks, like, comment, subscribe to get this content to reach more people. We have a Discord community where we brew decks, play games, and coordinate collaborations with other content creators. And speaking of, a few months back we had a 12-hour charity stream where we raised over $5,000 helping out the Canadian Red Cross in their efforts to support the people of Ukraine during this crisis in their country. And we wanted to thank everyone who turned out in support, who donated, who viewed, or who just spread the word in general. Now, I bring this up to one, thank everyone involved, but to also introduce the deck that I played during the stream. And it did some serious work. This is a slightly updated list, though, because we got some juicy new text recently. So, without any further ado, let's go check out Dog God. Dog God is a green-white legendary trouble +1/+1 counter aggro deck. It is modeled after Zergo Helm Smasher style decks, where because our commanders are indestructible on our turn, we can use that to drop board wipes that are mostly one-sided. Yoshimaru comes down in the early game, I mean like turn 1 early game, and can become big fast, with our metric crap ton of legendary dog sitters and lands that we can go visit. Then we have Anara, who gives both of them indestructible on our turn, making them the most spoiled hounds in town. We want to use +1/+1 counter synergies to build up our commanders in board state, while leveraging our speed and power over slower decks, and decks that use life total as a resource. Also, ones that don't maintain a board state are easy pickings. We like Wraths with varied effects like Fumigate, or that reduce their costs like Vanquish the Horde. This deck was built around a particular combo that uses 1 with Kami, any permanent that puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature when it enters the battlefield, and a sack outlet. 1 with Kami is a 4-mana aura with flash that can only enchant a creature we control. And it says, whenever enchanted creature or another modified creature you control dies, create X/1/1 colorless spirit creature tokens where X is the creature's power. So, if we can make one spirit that enters the battlefield modified, like having Regnata, Cathar's Crusade, or Juniper Order Ranger on board, we can create an infinite loop using a sack outlet like Greater Good for card advantage, Phyrexian Altar for mana, Blasting Station for damage. If you use Cathar's Crusade as an enabler, you can just deal damage with Triskelion and Walking Ballista instead. Or you can just swing for victory because everything will be infinitely huge. We actually have another combo we can get away with in this deck by creating a loop with Emerald Charm, Cauldron of Souls, Eternal Witness, or Timeless Witness, a +1/+1 counter generator for the Witness, and a sack outlet. It's more complex and uses more cards and steps, but it's a possible backup just in case the first way fails. To execute this combo, you need a Cauldron of Souls, Eternal Witness, Blasting Station, and let's say Yoshimaru with Master Chef on the board, and have Emerald Charm in hand. Give the Witness Persist, then sacrifice it to the station. In response, untap the Cauldron, and when the Eternal Witness returns, you can return the Charm, and the -1/-1 counter is counteracted by the +1/+1 counter from the Master Chef. This combo is only infinite when used with a Phyrexian Altar or some way to generate green mana with each loop, but can be used to trigger ETB effects because we can sacrifice any number of creatures we want to give Persist to with each loop, allowing us to abuse some pretty strong effects like Triskelion, the Great Henge, the Ozolith, and Cathar's Crusade. Outside of the combo that this deck is built around, we are running an aggressive +1/+1 counter strategy, paired with legendary permanents to fuel Yoshimaru. Recently, the background card type was printed and all backgrounds are legendary enchantments that augment our commanders, making them an amazing addition to this build, or any Yoshimaru build honestly. In my opinion, the best two for this build are Master Chef and Hardy Outlander, because our modified creature strategy making it so that the longer our commanders stick around, the more pressure we can leverage. The list I'm referencing only uses Master Chef now, but both cards could rock. We run a solid amount of tutors to assemble our combos. For enchantments, we have Enlightened Tutor, Idyllic Tutor, and Open the Armory. For creatures, we want only tutors that drop creatures onto the board to speed up our play speed. So we have Green Sun Zenith, Finale of Devastation, Court of Calling, and Worldly Tutor. Other card advantage comes from Balaged Recovery, Turn Timber Symbiosis, Mentor of the Meek, Esper Sentinel, and Toski. For our modifying strategy, we have cards like Hardened Scales and Conclave Mentor to increase the speed that our creatures gain counters. We have creatures that benefit from having counters or increased power like Esper Sentinel, Gyre Sage, and Incubation Druid that either ramp us or gain us card advantage. There are also a few +1/+1 counter lords we run, like Rishkar, Pima Renegade, Jiangyanggu, Wildcrafter, and Kodama of the West Tree. All of which add to our ramp package while buffing our existing creatures with more counters, and adding the ability to tap for mana or giving our creatures trample. I want to touch on protection, because this deck, despite our commanders being indestructible on our turn, is very susceptible otherwise. So, we need ways to defend the dogs. Silk Guard, Inspiring Call are great with counter synergies. Heroic Intervention and Teferi's Protection are good at avoiding wipes on other people's turn. And then we have Swiftfoot Boots and Robostars. I really want to mention Robostars here because it is one of my favorite forms of protection in this deck, specifically because it phases our creatures out. Same thing with Teferi's Protection. And this keeps all of the counters on our creatures. This lets us equip Yoshimaru without Anara and wipe the board, or protect our doggos on other people's turns. Phasing is super strong in a counter synergy deck. Before we make it to the spiciest includes, I want to mention the land base of this deck because it's where the secret strength of the deck lies. Yoshimaru is already really good on his own, but getting the possibility of basically landfall, get a +1/+1 counter cannot be underestimated. To be honest, I'd say proxy the land base because it's where the majority of the price of this deck is from, because legendary lands can be a bit expensive. But I want to note a few lands in particular. Hall of the Bandit Lord for granting haste. Heliod's Hall of Generosity gives us grave return for our enchantments. And lastly, Yavimaya Cradle of Growth and Nykthos fix our mana. The other lands are still sick, but those are the standout lands for me. Alright, now it's time for the spiciest includes. These are my top 5 favorite cards in the deck. Let's start with Emiel the Blessed. This is my number 5 because it allows me to trigger Yoshimaru, save a creature from targeted removal, and on top of all of that, I can bestow a +1/+1 counter on creatures when they enter if I have surplus mana. Honestly, solid overall. 4. Drizzt Do'Urden? Yeah. Drizzt Do'Urden, I think. You know what? I tried my best. He's my 4 because he double procs Yoshimaru with his legendary cat token, and has a creature death trigger. That means he has to die before the bigger threats because of his double strike, allowing him to be a massive threat outside of our commanders. Mikaeus the Lunarch is my number 3, and is one of, if not the best singular support creature in this deck. He has flexible casting costs, can generate his own counters, and give counters to the entire board. He is the essence of this deck boiled into one card. Consistent and deadly. Number 2. Hamza, Guardian of Arishan. This is a channel favorite, and should be no surprise here, especially since we made a deck using him not too long ago. Especially since we are also running Walking Ballista in a +1/+1 counter synergy deck. He also makes most, if not all of our creatures go from an average creature CMC of 3.5 to paying 1 or 2 mana for them based on the pips. He himself will usually be only 2 mana. And lastly, okay, not so much lastly, I have 3 of them at number 1. Master Chef, Cathar's Crusade, and Juniper Order Ranger. I know, I kind of cheated here and said 3, but they are basically the same card when I look at what this deck wants to do, which is generate counters as quickly and consistently as possible. They let us go tall, and they let us go wide in equal amounts. Okay. So now I spent a ton of time talking about the potential of this deck. This is an aggro deck with high combo synergy. This deck wants to be the problem at all times. It demands attention and answers. If it goes unchecked, it will snowball and start one-shotting players. Yoshimaru can be a 4-4 by turn 2. If you have a moderately quick hand, there's not much your opponents can do. There are a lot of variations you can make on this deck depending on if you want to go more into the commander damage route or deeper into the combo support, but this version I feel toes the line of being a balance between aggro, combo, and control. +1/+1 counters help us to be aggressive. They are the baseline for all of our combos, and we can control the creature state with indestructible commanders and board wipes to delay our opponents or even end games. That being said, watch out for counter lockout cards and grave hate. Both of those elements can shut down our game just as equally as we can dominate it. I'd play this deck at a table to balance out a board because it has a very even balance between all of its elements, making it able to punch up or even play down. Though it can be frustrating for new players to play against, you also may want to practice this deck because it requires tracking a ton of triggers and interactions, as well as sequencing. So it can play very optimally, giving it a decently high skill ceiling, but a really low skill floor based on how you conceptually look at it. So yeah, that's Dog God, the most dangerous and loyal and adorable green-white deck out there. Thanks for sticking with me till the end. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the build, or if you've used Yoshimaru or Anara in any other builds. I'm working on bringing more content back to the channel again. It's still going to be slow, but I'm also going to be more varied, talking about game design, color philosophy, and more flavorful casual deck techs than Josh's CEDH stuff. See you soon, and remember, untap, upkeep, drink. Cheers, everyone.